Hello, I am Chad Broshears. I am the founder of Go Figure Holistic Personal Training, also the founder of a holistic maturity and development program that will be introduced in the near future. So what I'm here to talk to you about today is actually the three different types of stretching. I've come across quite a few different pieces of literature out there, scientific studies and these things that are saying that stretching is no good or stretching is good and how you should implement it. And here's the gist of stretching. First and foremost, I'm going to talk to you about this in a holistic approach. So it's not going to be, oh, you just stretch and you just do this thing. It's actually more about the holistic positioning of the body more so than just go stretch this, go stretch that, and more or less the science of stretching inside of the truth. So there are three different basic types of stretching. The first stretching style is static. The importance of static stretching is that's when you hold it to a position. You pull, like, let's say a hamstring stretch. You pull the leg back to whatever level is tolerable. And I'm going to talk about the tolerable level in just a minute, or the actual exertion value that you should go into. But you pull it back to that position and you hold it there for 30 to 45 seconds, depending on if it's corrective stretching or if it's just basic stretching post-training. You only want to do static training post-training, or static stretching post-training. You do not want to do that before you work out, because actually that prompts the system for rest and recovery, which is a parasympathetic dominance. You don't want to be in the parasympathetic dominance when you go into working out, because that's where you feel more at ease, more possibly lethargic at times, because your body's actually prompt for going to sleep or for just resting. And that's a quick way to actually stimulate that system by getting the actual accurate stress or the stretch level implemented and breathing correctly. And I'll go into the breathing in just a second as well. Dynamic stretching is what you want to do before you start exercising. Dynamic stretching ranges from any exercise or any movement that's going to complement the exercises you're intending to do during that exercise session. So what that means is if you're going to do a bench press, you want to do something that kind of mocks that motion. But dynamic means that it's also multiple movements. It's not just one. So whenever I put in dynamic stretching, what I intend for people to understand is that it's actually a whole body stretch exercise, but it's not static. It's actually in motion. You don't stop at any point in time and actually sit there and hold a stretch, because that actually goes into isolated or static stretching again. Ballistic stretching is what you see a lot of runners do, or a lot of people don't really understand stretching, where they move in a very rapid movement. They may twist a lot. They do a lot of different jerking motions. There's a lot of skeletal stopping rather than muscular stopping in the body when it comes to that. You'll see like a hip range of motion that reaches or exceeds its level of an ability. Ballistic stretching is the dangerous form of stretching. There is a science to all of the stretching concepts, so you really want to be either educated or find somebody who is educated in these areas in order to best suit your static need or your stretching needs. Now, muscle spindles is actually, you stretch to a certain point, and whenever I mean a certain point, I use a scale with my clients, and that is from 1 to 10. 1 being there's nothing going on, you don't feel anything, you're pretty much just laying there, or you feel nothing as far as a stretch goes. You don't even feel the arm or that part of your body necessarily. Now, 10 would be somebody's physically pulling something out of your body, as far as that's how hard of a stretch it would be, like you feel something tearing. I always go for 5 on that scale. 5 is mild discomfort at the most. This is if there is no existing pathology. If there's an existing pathology, you do not want to stretch to mild discomfort. You want to stretch to something that's called comfort inside of the pathology. It's not comfort for whatever your normal is. It's comfort for what actually is at that moment comfortable. Now, the reason why I'm wanting to tell you this first is because muscle spindles is a safety feature built into all of our muscles there to help protect our joints. If you exceed a specific range of motion, the muscle spindle's design is actually to tear muscle, trigger the pain effect in the body, and cause that for you to protect the joint rather than let it continue to exceed past its end range of motion, safe end range of motion. So that's the muscle spindle. In order to communicate with that, you have to prompt the parasympathetic in the static stretching situation. You don't want to go to anything above mild discomfort anyhow, no matter which stretch value you go into. So people that tell you it should hurt, should burn, burning is not static, or that is not a 5 on the scale. Mild discomfort is not a burn. It's before the burning sensation steps in. You do feel the stretch value, but it is not burning, because burning actually is associated more with the pain. It stimulates the sympathetic nervous system. In the autonomic nervous system, you have the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. Parasympathetic is for rest and recovery. Sympathetic is for fight or flight. So if you stimulate from pain, you're going to go into the sympathetic nervous system. You do not want to do that pre-workout either. You're going to get into that system regardless, so you don't want to do it that way, because you can actually damage muscle when you get into that pain sensation. Pain means something. So breathing is the only way. Well, you have to create the environment first. So you put yourself into the static position or the stretching position. If it's static, you get to your level 5 and say, like a pectoral stretch out like this, braced against something, and you would just pull yourself to a 5. When you get to that 5, you would start breathing relaxed, deep, full breaths in through your nose and out through your mouth. If you breathe in through your nose and out through your nose, you're going to overstimulate the parasympathetic nerve endings that's in the nostril hairs, which is a direct connection to the parasympathetic system, the autonomic system. If you overstimulate it, you're going to force the system into sympathetic response. The sympathetic response causes you to tighten up, get ready. Blood flows to the muscles away from the digestive system, flows to the muscle for work, or flows to the muscle for activity, for getting the hell away from a tiger if you're being chased by that. Not rest and recovery where you're breathing nice and easy through your nose and out through your mouth. That is intended for static stretching post-training. It's also good to do that as you're warming up with your dynamic stretches. Ballistic stretching is something I suggest never to do. And I always suggest this of my clients as well. Never do ballistic stretching. When I just consult people and they're not even clients, I tell them the exact same thing, because their well-being is my job. So breathing, again, is just relaxed, deep, full diaphragmatic breaths. They are relaxed. If you don't do the relaxed version, you're not going to stimulate the parasympathetic. Now, hydration is extremely important, and people do not understand this piece. Hydration is, by the way, this means no diuretic agents, meaning no coffee, no alcohol, no excessive amounts of processed salts and things like that. The body's trying to use the water, hydration, to get these toxins or these substances out of your body. The hydration level is, and this is for the individual, this is not the generic idea of hydration, which is 8 to 10 glasses, 8-ounce glasses. That may work well if you're about 5 foot tall and weighing the equivalent of, let's see what that would be. Weighing roughly, 200 pounds or 230, something like that. Which, if you were to look at the American version of what's considered healthy, then it would be roughly about 5'8". But it does not take into consideration activity levels, your current level of hydration. So if you're dehydrated, you obviously are going to need to put a little bit more in. But the equation is, it's half your body's weight in ounces. And again, this is not with diuretic agents. So half your body's weight. So the example is, if you're a 200-pound person, a man or woman, you should be taking in a minimum of 100 ounces a day. Most people take in much, much, much less than that. So if you're 7 foot tall or even almost 8 foot tall, 140 ounces of water is not going to cut it for you. If you are 4'2", obviously 120 ounces is going to be quite a bit for you. So the equation again is your body's weight. That is actually more appropriate for you. So if you're not well hydrated, you're more likely to injure your muscles, as well as you can't flush these things out, like post-training with the static stretching. You can't even flush this stuff out, the lactic acid and any other byproducts of exercise. You cannot flush it out effectively, because your body is not going to say, hey, I need to send water to these muscles whenever you're already dehydrated and your organs and your vital systems are requiring more water than your muscles are. So you're not going to get the value, you're not going to get the recovery, both building the muscle, the effectiveness for working out. You're not going to get the benefit of any of this because you're dehydrated. I can go a long lecture into hydration, because hydration is something that is vastly misunderstood. And most people's symptoms whenever they're having medical challenges are usually just advanced stage dehydration. By the way, a headache is most easily treated with just taking in more water. Stomach pains are usually very much more easily treated by water rather than antacids. The antacids actually cause a challenge to the acid values in the stomach and only perpetuate the challenge that they're dealing with, which causes worse challenges in the future. So hydration, again, is very misunderstood, and I will do lectures on this in the near future. Now, range of motion. First and foremost, when you want to learn range of motion, what I do with all of my clients is I test their joint flexibility. Joint flexibility is there's 8 points to the test. It's a finger test like this. If you go beyond 90 degrees, that means that you have hypermobility in the hand, which is directly related to how much mobility you have throughout the arm in itself, because the hand is a reflection of the whole arm. Now, there's the hand portion. It's always to the fingers. So you pull them as far as you can with comfort, no pain. If there's pain, you have to stop, because that's actually forcing beyond your actual range of motion. There's the elbow test, where you draw your arms out like this, and if you can pull them beyond the flat level here, which actually means the elbow's going beyond or through or up further, then that means that you're hypermobile in the elbow. There's also, most people like, and they think it's very healthy, to be able to have a straight leg, reach down and touch the floor with their palms. That's actually considered to be a sloppy hip socket, because the hip's range of motion should not be able to do that. That's too far in a stretch. And again, that is a direct reflection of the hip's flexibility, the hip socket. If your hip sockets are sloppy, you're more likely to injure. And that can be related to hydration as well, but that's a little bit more of an advanced conversation for this moment. So I do the test. It's an 8-point test. I also check the knees, so if the person can lock their knees past this portion here, so if the leg bends this direction and it comes to this point, you should not be able to hyperextend the knee to this point. If you extend to this point, you have a hypermobile knee. You're extremely prone to knee injury as well as ankle, because the knee, that's all connected, right? So first is there's the tight, and then there's taut whenever it comes to range of motion and muscle. If you're stretching out a tight muscle, say this is as far as I could get my arm. This is not a truth. I actually have a great range of motion. But this is as far as I could go in a stretch for the bicep, then I need to actually stretch this because it's tight. If I can't do, and the whole body is balance factors, so I don't want to go too far into that either, because I can far exceed the time limit I'm allowing myself on this video. So there's also taut. Taut is whenever you can say, and the hamstring's a really easy expression for this. People that can touch the floor have taut hamstrings, which, in the standing position, if you can touch the floor, you have taut hamstrings, meaning that they're too far stretched. They actually need to tighten up to help support the joints. Otherwise, you're in range of motion and you're more likely to injure yourself. 90-degree bend in the hip is ideal. That's actually the furthest you want to go. That's end range of motion when you're laying on your back or in the supine position and you bring your leg up. So when you bring your leg up, if you go to the 90 degrees, that's actually a taut muscle and you need to tighten it up. So that's something that's actually in a training regimen, and you don't want to stretch that muscle. And then there's, we'll get into nerve connections, and then I'll end this podcast or this video. So a friend of mine just showed up. So as far as nerve connections, whenever you prep yourself for work in a dynamic stretching environment, or in a dynamic manner, you're prepping yourself for that movement, meaning you're not overstimulating the nerves. You're basically waking up the muscle and you're waking up the nerves. If you static stretch it, when you static stretch it, you're overstimulating the nerve to tell it not to work. You're talking it into the parasympathetic system, so long as you are breathing correctly and your mind is at ease and at peace. If your mind's going crazy and you're breathing you're breathing with this whole diaphragmatic deep breathing, you're going to have a conflicting situation, because either you're going to breathe rapidly and then you're within a few minutes, or your thoughts will settle. But you really want to be in tune as soon as possible, so meaning it being at peace. So static stretching, that does help stimulate those nerves. But the dynamic stretching does not stimulate to cause challenges in the exercise itself. It will not limit performance. That is what static stretching would do. And this is a very important factor when it comes to stretching. So nerve connections, and I can go further into this, but right now I don't have time for that. This is getting to be a long podcast. So if you have any questions about this, feel free to contact me, either off of my Facebook account at Chad Broshears at facebook.com, or my company, Go Figure Holistic Personal Training. Again, I'm a holistic personal trainer and a holistic developmental maturity trainer. My phone number is 727-534-5773. If you'd like to have a conversation or do a consult or anything of that nature, or to further this conversation, please feel free to contact me or contact my office. Again, thank you very much for your time, and have a wonderful day. Hopefully this is information that did help you.